Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about genre and how it functions on social media as well as in our writing processes. And this could include writing processes on and off social media. I'm going to try and move quickly through these slides. So I want to emphasize that if anyone needs to at any time, they can pause and read over the text in its original form. So essentially, I'm going to start out with Lloyd Bitzer, who doesn't call it genre, but talks about the way that from day to day, year to year, comparable situations occur, prompting comparable responses, right? So there's certain forms are born out of individuals responding to situations in similar ways. So for example, the genre of meeting your professor has certain expectations, right? And as individuals see others meeting with professors or meet with professors on their own, they begin to understand sort of the norms and the conventions for the rhetorical situation of meeting with a professor. And then the second half of this quote notes that because we experience these situations and the responses to them, a form of discourse is not only established, but comes to have this power over it, right? The tradition tends to function as a constraint upon any new response in the form. So for example, if you wanted to come up to a professor and say, yo, what's up, homie? How you doing, slime? Then that may not work well because the tradition within the academy sort of calls for this artificial, respectful, but brief exchange, right? So it's important to think about the role of tradition, the role of routine responses, and how the more we respond to certain situations in one single way, the more deeply rooted the sort of genre conventions are. Only once a great many individuals across a great many campuses begin approaching their professors in such a way would it perhaps become normal to do so. So I want you to hold on to that understanding of genre that we get from Bitzer as we now go back into a different text. And in this text, we have Amy Devitt. She's going to come to the same conclusion as Bitzer, but her argument for why is really interesting and important. And essentially, what she's arguing is that form and content are deeply interconnected, and we can't separate them, right? So when one places content into different forms, they're going through a process of writing, of negotiating, of considering, right? And that takes up both form and content. She's interested in sort of reunifying writing because she's concerned with the way that conventional genre approach sort of tries to separate writing, right? It separates content, which we might call writing, from different forms. And again, this suggests that we could go into different forms and the content would stay the same. But we know that writing processes are delicate and are affected by context big time. So you can't just erase the entire form in which we are writing within, whether that be a social media platform, a piece of paper, a newspaper, right? There's all kinds of different genres and subgenres that sort of have these conventions. So in her conception of new notions of genre, she says that it requires releasing old notions of genre as form and text type and embracing new genre as dynamic patterning of human experience. So again, if we go back to that example I said of meeting the professor on campus, the patterning is students meeting professors on campus. And the conventions emerge when we see people respond to that situation in similar ways over time. So that new conception of genre would shift focus from the effects, right, to the sources of those effects. So what is it about the situation of meeting a professor that prompts these types of genre approaches? That's one way in which we can approach genre in a much more helpful way. But what's this old notion of genre? So the old notion of genre, and again, you can pause this if you want to read through, but essentially it's just this idea of this filing system or classification system in which we can say this text has these qualities and so it goes here. And again, Devitt is against this because she doesn't think writing processes occur this way, right? We don't just look at a finished product and say, oh, this fits in this genre. Instead, we might think about the individual writing and what genre they thought they were writing in, their experience with that genre, right? If they're making some sort of cowboy film, say, what cowboy films have they watched? Do they like? What values do those have? How does that affect sort of what they were trying to do, right? So her big argument is, and it comes down here, right, is whatever you want to call them, genres are systems for classifying text that only focus on static finished products. And in order to have a better conception of genre that might help writers, we need to think about how genres affect the open writing process instead of just looking at a finished product and classifying it as something. So treating genre as form requires dividing form from content, with genre as the form into which content is put. Again, you cannot place the same writing into different forms and call it different genres, because when individuals begin writing, they are engaging with the form and they have certain expectations of how they should engage with that form based off their experience with that genre. And so we have to think about genre in this way in order to understand how it guides both our individual writing processes, but also our collective writing processes. A great example of how we can approach genre is consider the meme, right? In the meme that we have here, the form might be this background image. And so when someone chooses this form, this background image, it's going to influence what content they're going to put in it. And it's influenced by their knowledge of the film, right? But also their knowledge of how this image from this film is used in meme culture. The more Morpheus memes they've seen that use this background image as form, the more the different types of content that they'll also see that might go into that form. So you see how this relationship between form and content emerges. That's really important. We know to write within the meme, what if I told you at the beginning? Because we've seen it before. We've seen individuals use that content, what if I told you, on the form of the image. And so we know that the convention of this individual meme is to say, what if I told you at the beginning? And that knowledge comes into our writing process when we create this meme, and also when we read this meme. If it doesn't say, what if I told you at the top, and it says something totally separate that has nothing to do with the movie or nothing to do with how individuals have used this image from this movie, then it won't make as much sense. So, as we start to think about genres as responses to situations, there's some important things we need to look into. And some of this is rehashed, right? So genres already exist and already constrain responses to situations. As we just said, the meme genre already exists, and that constrains how we might engage with the image of Morpheus, right? Another key emphasis is that the features that genre develop respond appropriately to their situations. So it's not just a convention, but it's also that it's quote unquote appropriate within this given context, within this time and space. There is a certain a way of responding that has been deemed collectively by our society as appropriate for the situation. If we go back to meeting the professor, there is the appropriate way to meet them as decided by a history of meetings, and then there are individuals who might want to subvert the genre or to talk with the professors in new ways, and they're sort of complicating the whole thing, complicating the genre, right? Making it new, maybe even changing it. Once we recognize a reoccurring situation, a situation that we or others have responded to in the past, our response is guided by past responses. This is a big reason why we have to think of genre in this way, because it allows us to bring genre into processes. If our response to a situation is guided by past responses, then we can't look at finished text after the fact and call them this genre because they have X, Y, or Z qualities. Because in fact, it's a lot more, instead of that, it's really guiding the way that we write in different scenarios, different situations. Knowing the genre means knowing not only how to conform to the conventions, but how to respond appropriately. Again, we just talked about that. So, genres are essentially pattern responses to social situations that become conventionalized through regular use. As social situations change, so do the ways we respond to them. Conversely, the ways we respond to social situations become conventions for how to respond to that situation. This makes it difficult for the individual to think outside of them. So if we see over to our right, you might see one half of the circle, right, this sphere, as the conventionalized way to respond, right? So everybody responds on Twitter in these certain conventional ways after seeing a film. And then the individual goes into that space of Twitter, sees how others respond, right, or has a history of responding, and then they follow that appropriate response history. Or they don't. There's an opportunity to subvert, but we often are guided by the way that we have as individuals written it in these certain forms, and also how others do. So for your assignment, I want you to pick a platform, a social networking platform, and identify a genre that you see common on that space. Then I want you to explore what you think the audience is for that genre, what style is appropriate, and what's the relationship between form and content. These top 4 are really important. 5 and 6, it's up to you if you want to go that far, if you want to take it there, but make sure to answer 1 through 4 here. And here is a sort of example I've provided. So now I'm thinking about, you know how people post this image of them sort of on vacation on different social medias. So I was thinking the vacation flex might be one genre that we pick. And specifically, we might pick the Snapchat vacation flex, right? So because this image of me celebrating on vacation is posted on Snapchat, I've identified my genre, because it's form and content together, as the Snapchat vacation flex. The Snapchat vacation flex is a genre that is aimed at celebrating one's vacation. I'm now thinking about the form, right? Snapchat as a form only allows those who you accept as a friend to view your post. Also, your image disappears after one viewing. So given the form, given these qualities of the form, it can be gathered that users might post more risque vacation photos in this genre, right? So the Snapchat vacation flex as a genre has more risque vacation photos because of the Snapchat's form, whereas the Facebook vacation flex might be different because it's for a different audience, right? So if your Facebook audience is family, your Facebook vacation flex is going to be a different genre than your Snapchat vacation flex because your audience is different, right? So, and then I was noting here at the bottom how you might note how changes in the form change how the genre works. So recently Snapchat had added all these different text types, and so we can't really say what the norm is for the Snapchat vacation flex in terms of font styles, for example, yet, because that genre is still being experimented with. So this is an example. I hope it helps. I hope all this stuff wasn't too confusing for you. Shoot me an email if you have any questions. I know genre is sticky. And don't forget to look at the handouts I've provided for genre, which may help you with this stuff. Thanks, and good luck.